You said a fortnight ago about the loss of my son Ivan, and I particularly want to thank the Prime Minister for what he said. It came straight from the heart, and it meant a great deal to Samantha and to me. We've had letters from right across the House of Commons and from thousands of people in the country, and it has been a great comfort to know that others are thinking of us. A lot of letters have come from families who themselves have lost children, and if there's a common theme in them, it's that while the loss never goes away, there does come a day where you look back at your child's life and you think happy thoughts at their life rather than feel sorrow at their death. And I hope that day will come for us too. Today, I join the Prime Minister in mourning the dreadful losses of the three British families, sappers Mark Quincy and Patrick Azimka and Constable Stephen Carroll. And on the day we remember the service of our soldiers, we should remind those who protest against them that they only have the right to do so because British soldiers put their lives on the line. On Northern Ireland, let us be clear about the nature of these crimes. They were committed by callous killers capable of shooting men in cold blood and standing over their wounded bodies and murdering them. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that the most important thing in Northern Ireland today is that everyone works with the police so that these killers can be found, caught, charged and convicted?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Let me welcome back the Leader of the Opposition, and I understand the grief that he and his family have been going through. In Northern Ireland today, we are seeing a degree of unity amongst the political parties that some people thought that they would never see in their lifetimes. We are seeing all parties call for the citizens of Northern Ireland to cooperate with the police. We're seeing all parties condemning the violence that has happened. And we're seeing all parties asking those people who have information to help the police track down these killers. As the House will know, two men have been arrested as a result of the police killing, and the hunt is on for those people who brutally murdered the soldiers on Saturday evening. I can say to the House we will do everything we can to enhance the security arrangements in Northern Ireland. I've talked directly to the Chief Constable Hugh Ward about it. We will leave no stone unturned in making sure that he has available to him all the arrangements that are necessary to enhance security there. And I do believe that out of tragedy we are seeing a unity which shows the determination that while a few murderers may try to disrupt the process, the whole of the people of Northern Ireland want not only to see justice done, but want to send a message that the political process is here to stay and is working.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is absolutely right about this unity. It is remarkable, and it is remarkably welcome that every political party in Northern Ireland, including individuals who were themselves once bombers and terrorists, are calling on people to cooperate with the police. Does he agree with me that this highlights the importance of our reaction, which should be to say that Northern Ireland is not on the brink, is not staring into an abyss, but instead needs effective policing, the cooperation of the public and the measured reaction of politicians? Aren't those the things we need to make sure that these murderers never win?
I agree entirely with what he's said, and I see the assent of all parties sitting in the House to what we are both saying about the importance of people working together to hunt down these criminals. We are dealing with a small minority. The real IRA and continuity IRA have claimed credit for these killings in a way that is sickening, and a way that they seem not to be able to distinguish either between the needs of the armed services and civilians, and calling civilians collaborators was something that I think was totally despicable. Mr. Speaker, we will do everything in our power to track down these killers, but we will also do everything in our power to support the police and the armed forces. It is right to raise the support that we give to our armed forces in every part of the country. And homecoming parades should be what people in the communities want them to be. And that is a celebration and a commemoration of the great service and dedication of our armed forces in every part of the country. And I believe that the country wishes the homecoming parades that are going on in Watford and then Windsor and then in Bolton to go ahead without interruption. There is a right to freedom of speech, but there is not a right to disruption and to public disorder. And it is our duty to make sure that order is kept.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The whole House would have agreed with what the Prime Minister said about the value of these homecoming parades. But can I turn to another issue? Serious allegations have been made that Britain may have been complicit in torture. Now, let us be absolutely clear about Binyan Mohammed. Allegations have to be dealt with. Now, it's right that the Attorney-General should see whether a crime has been committed, but isn't it also important that the Prime Minister is satisfied that Britain has throughout acted with moral authority over and above the question about whether a crime has been committed? And can the Prime Minister tell us what he has done to satisfy himself of the true facts in this case?
Mr. Speaker, let me say right at the outset, this government unreservedly condemns the use of torture. Under no circumstances will we participate in, encourage or condone the use of torture for any purpose. And I have instructed where allegations are made about torture, they must be properly examined, including, if necessary, by the courts. Now, the Attorney-General is looking at the very specific allegations in this case. If there is evidence, this evidence will be referred to the police, and the police will then be able to conduct a criminal inquiry. But the matter is at the moment with the Attorney-General, who is looking at all the evidence. As I say, I've instructed that whenever allegations are made, they are properly investigated.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I'm grateful for the Prime Minister's assurances, and we agree completely with what he says about torture being unacceptable. And we all want to eradicate the potential stain on Britain's reputation. But the question is whether an investigation into criminal conduct by the Attorney-General is enough. Surely we need to look at what procedures and processes are in place to ensure that Britain cannot knowingly or unknowingly be implicated in torture. Isn't that why we need a brief, judge-led inquiry into what happened and what lessons need to be learned?
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate what he says, and it's absolutely right that at all times we're vigilant, because the freedoms and liberties of this country are best served by making absolutely sure that we unreservedly condemn and do not allow the use of torture. The Intelligence and Security Committee have investigated some aspects of these matters. They have had reports that have been done in 2005 and 2007. They will continue, obviously, to look at these matters because that is their statutory role given to them. At the same time, the Attorney-General will look at all the details, and I've made it clear that there is a next stage. If there is any evidence that should lead to a police investigation, that evidence will be referred to the police, and if the police decide so, then a criminal investigation will be carried out. I think this is the best way to deal with these specific instances. The Intelligence and Security Committee looks at the general cases.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, but it's not clear that the Attorney-General's inquiry is going to answer the question that the Prime Minister himself rightly poses, which is, have we acted properly at all times during these procedures? The Attorney-General is going to be looking at the one case rather than the procedures in all cases. Yeah. The Attorney-General is looking at whether a crime has been committed, quite rightly, but isn't really looking at our moral authority and whether it's been maintained. Doesn't the Prime Minister see that an inquiry is likely to become necessary? Either the Attorney-General will find a crime has been committed, in which case there'll be a clamour for an inquiry to answer how on earth this was allowed to happen. Or, on the other hand, if the Attorney-General decides not to go ahead with a prosecution, we still won't really have the answers to what happened in this important case. On either ground, wouldn't it be better to order that judge-led inquiry instead of having it dragged out in the weeks ahead?
I have to say that the Intelligence and Security Committee has and continues to inquire into these matters. And of course we've had a debate about the full status of the Intelligence and Security Committee for the future, but they have looked at the issue of rendition in great detail in their previous inquiry. Can I just say, as regards the Attorney-General, that the Home Secretary referred the question of possible criminal wrongdoing to the Attorney-General in her role as an advisor to government. She is consulting others, as is necessary, about what needs to be done. Obviously, it is for her to decide how she is likely to proceed, but the court, which heard Binyam Mohammed's judicial review case, has made clear that they think this is the right way to proceed. So I hope he will allow the inquiries that are taking place to proceed, and on the general issues he's raised, of course, Britain, because of our defence of freedom and liberty, wishes to be seen to be doing everything in our power to deal with questions that arise about the use of torture or rendition. But I believe that the Intelligence and Security Committee at this stage is the best way to proceed. But let us hear the report of the Attorney-General.
That committee is a group of MPs and peers.
In addition to the welcome observations the Prime Minister made about the terrible tragedies in Northern Ireland, does he also agree?
And Corporal Carroll and the serious injuries suffered by 4 others. can I say on behalf of all of us on these benches that our hearts go out to the families of the victims, though they harden against their murderers. Their violence must not, will not divide the people of Northern Ireland. Instead, it will strengthen their resolve to live their lives in peace. And that is the unwavering message of the dignified demonstrations taking place in Northern Ireland today. Yeah. Could I also extend my personal welcome to the Leader of the Conservative Party back to Parliament and say on behalf of all of us on these benches that we sincerely hope that he and his family have the time, the space to cope with the terrible loss they have suffered. Mr. Speaker, I'm sure the Prime Minister will agree with me that the announcement today from President Sarkozy to reverse General de Gaulle's legacy and rejoin NATO is hugely significant. But does he also agree with me that it offers an enormous opportunity for Britain, with France, to lead European defence cooperation, which has been held back by tensions surrounding the Atlantic Alliance?
I do welcome France's announcement that at the NATO summit on April the 3rd and the 4th, with the President of America and other people present, they will announce that they will return to the inner core of NATO. And I believe that that is good for the defence of the world. I also believe that there are opportunities for cooperation, not just between France and Britain, but between the rest of the world in nuclear disarmament. We are at a critical point in the nuclear proliferation discussions. We are at a particularly difficult point in relation to Iran. We have made it clear to Iran that they cannot join the international community unless they renounce nuclear weapons. But I believe a wider deal on nuclear arms is possible in the next few years, and I think you will see that France and America and other members of NATO are keen to see that happen.
Speaker, I welcome his response, but my main concern is that he may still miss the full opportunity available to him. If he could commit Britain to working fully with France and others on European defence, which frankly we haven't done until now, then he would be in a stronger position to ask them to commit more money, more troops to Afghanistan. Does he recognise there's a good bargain to be had, which would be of enormous help to our overstretched servicemen and servicewomen in many years ahead?
European defence cooperation is important, and I think you'll know that it exists in many, many areas, particularly between Britain and France. And I've talked directly with President Sarkozy about what more we can do together in Afghanistan and other places. But I think we've got to remember also that we are talking about the British Army, the British Armed Forces, the British Navy and the British Air Force. And we are going to defend our right to make our own decisions as well.
Rodin Smith.
The case for the partial sale of Royal Mail is crumbling and opposition is growing across the country and in this House.